We are excited to welcome Mr. Greg Blandford. He is the director for Rubicon, and he's going to be talking to us about localization and the circular economy. How do EVs, batteries and solar all come together to create a circular economy in South Africa, and hopefully also leaning on this job creation, local manufacture, growing the economy through the transition to electric mobility. Greg, are you with us, sir?
Thank you. It's really good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much for taking some time out. I know you've been quite a busy man the last few weeks, so thank you for taking a bit of time in your diary to chat to us today.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. As I say, I've been monitoring, I've been in and out of the meetings, and I must say it's been super exciting just to hear the various speakers, and it also just reaffirms, the discussion around localization for EVs and the technology that surrounds that. So yeah, it's really, really exciting to see, and everybody's pretty much talking the same language.
Fantastic. Well, Greg, I'm not going to cut into most of your time because I know the circular economy, and I've had a look at your presentation. I think you got some exciting stuff to share with you. So let's let you take it away, and hopefully we'll have some great questions and answers towards the end of your session. So over to you, sir.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Rob. Yeah, so maybe what I'll just do is give a bit of background as well, because we do get a lot of questions around the vehicle that we imported in South Africa. So maybe I'll start with that. So we brought in the first Tesla Model X into South Africa. This was roughly a year ago. And so far we've done just under 25,000 kilometers across the country, testing out the local infrastructure, both DC and AC on charging. And I must say it's been a pleasant experience, obviously a bit of a learning curve. The vehicle is next level. As with most EVs, it's a pleasure to drive. The technology is absolutely amazing. I can't sing electric vehicles praises enough. I think, just as far as Tesla is concerned, hopefully we'll see them in South Africa at some point in time. But I think we've got a lot to look forward to with the local OEMs. VW, BMW, we've seen the new Audi range of electric vehicles being launched last week in South Africa. So it's really, really exciting to see the big brands bringing their vehicles to South Africa. So I wouldn't be surprised that further down the line we'd start to see Tesla eventually come to South Africa. So just as far as costs are concerned, I mean, those trips that we've done across SA, roughly 25,000 kilometers, roughly 40,000 Rand saving in fuel costs just over that short period of time based on current fuel costs. And about 80% of the charging that was done on the vehicle is from renewable sources. It's pretty much unavoidable to get a 100% at this stage in South Africa. I think we're growing as the rest of Europe is into that space. So they are critically important. Just to give you a little bit of just a little bit of background on Rubicon. So I'm going to just go over to the next slide. Oops. Sorry, my slide is not moving. There we go. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background on who Rubicon is, because many people out there don't know who we are. We're a business-to-business organization with various branches around Africa. So an international company born out of the automotive industry in Port Elizabeth originally. So in 1986 we were established, and currently we have offices all over Africa and also expanding into Europe now. So the primary focus for us was on the automotive sector of South Africa. So building the automations in the automation space with tier 1, tier 2 manufacturers to the automotive sector. So primary focus has always been there. And I think this is also what's helped us to transition over to e-mobility in an easier way, because we've supported OEMs over the last 30 odd years, helping them build their vehicles and supporting them in critical processes, for those vehicles. So as we currently stand, we have these 5 divisions within the group. energy and storage and e-mobility is my responsibility. And then we still have a lighting, building automation, and power solutions divisions. Okay. So this is an interesting slide, and I think not everybody has seen this, and this is why I've included it in the slide pack. I think it's interesting to note, and firstly, kudos to Gridcars on building out the charging infrastructure as it stands. Most of the DC charging infrastructure we see across SA has been provided by Gridcars. So well done to the team there, Yaku and De Villiers and Winston. It's been great to see the progress there. So currently the network is expanding, and we're seeing more and more DC and AC charging stations being installed. So even just on our side, we're also a charge point operator providing charging services and infrastructure in South Africa. And if we just take a look at the volume of chargers being installed in this year, so we estimate it's probably going to be in the region of up to 1,000 chargers overall, AC and DC. But on our own, we can quite comfortably state that we'll do between 300 to 350 charging stations. These will be public charging stations. So most of that network will be AC, and the balance will be DC. So I would say, as a ratio split or percentage split, you're looking at probably 95% AC and 5% DC at this stage. So, and I mean, this also speaks back to the chicken and egg scenario. Now, do we put big DC charging infrastructure down from the private sector, or do we, we approach it from the AC side first, wait for more vehicles to come into the country, and then initiate DC charging infrastructure? So I think that this map is going to change significantly over the next year. This obviously comes from PlugShare, but I think that over the next 5 years, this map is going to look a lot better, especially on the DC side. We've got contracts with some of the OEMs to install DC charging infrastructure for their new launch of vehicles, and those are being currently installed and implemented. Okay, so this slide is pretty much sums up, or this picture sums up a lot of what's being discussed in various presentations over the last day or two. So that, I mean, it's clear to understand that even on the last presentation for the buses, is that our backbone infrastructure is too weak to support large-scale DC charging infrastructure. So if we look at the large-scale or ultra-fast charging stations that are currently available in Europe, between 2 and 350 kilowatt, looking at a 200 kilowatt as a sort of a bread and butter staple product installed in the European market and America. We see that those products alone per charging station draw 450 amps on the back end of the grid. So a lot of consideration has to be given to our infrastructure and developing the infrastructure, and a lot of that does fall on municipalities' shoulders and also government. And that's something that we'll discuss further in the slide pack. But the way that we see this going forward, especially for ultra-fast charging, is that there will be a backbone of large-scale ultra-fast charging in public spaces in the city environment, but also along national highways, but would be supported by solar and large-scale energy storage systems. So as you may or may not know, we are Tesla's partner for South Africa, and hence the slide here. So we would support charging infrastructure on the ultra-fast charging side with products like Megapack or PowerPack, and charging solar rooftop, also supporting that battery pack. And I think we're going to see more and more of this for South Africa. Unfortunately, it's something that has to be implemented. We've got no choice. Our grid is failing at this stage. It's currently being built up. Obviously, there's low capacity, etc., and we need to start looking at alternative routes to support the grid for EV charging, because it's coming at a rapid pace and we unfortunately just not keeping up with it. And then along with that, we need to implement smart grids. And I know that some municipalities are looking at this technology. And I think it all forms part and parcel of the whole ecosystem, providing smart technologies, smart grids for electric vehicles, solar and energy storage. And the management of that from a municipal level, from one platform or management system, so energy management system for municipality being, I mean, just giving you the scenario, and I want to paint the picture because I know this technology exists in the US and Europe, where entire city blocks or entire cities for that matter are controlled by one control center from the renewable energy storage and renewable energy space. So that's energy storage and solar. And the city has the ability to control the discharge of those batteries into the grid and to control how much power is utilized in certain sectors. So I think that this technology will infiltrate South Africa very, very soon. And I think it's obviously an overlay to what we are trying to build out from a infrastructure development side on electric vehicles. So it's definitely something that that is on the horizon, and actually I know that the City of Cape Town is busy with this currently. Okay, so a couple of the hurdles, and I think everybody has discussed this, you know, over the last day or two. So the energy grid and utilities in general, infrastructure is government's responsibility. In some capacity, we do, as the private sector, do offer some support to the grid, and I think this is going to have to happen over the next coming years. But ultimately, it's government's responsibility to look after things like rail, power supply, bridges, road infrastructure, etc., etc. And you know, we unfortunately we always look at the negative. Government does do a lot of positive, and the ideas in South Africa are fantastic. They're actually world class, world leading. But I think where we fall down from government's perspective is the implementation. Due to things like corruption, etc. These projects never reach a point where they become world class from idea to implementation, in other words. So, I mean, we've discussed grid capacity. Everybody knows about load shedding. I think that that's going to continue for years to come, and it will only be exacerbated by new technologies like electric vehicles. Power quality is another one. We've been involved with the solar industry for many years, and also now offering power quality solutions to the large commercial clients, and analyzing some of the power just at a municipal level. The power's all over the place. There's often we see damage to sensitive equipment, both from an industrial sense and in a commercial sense, and even residential. So power quality is an issue. Load shedding doesn't help that, unfortunately. So we've got all these spikes and dips, under voltage, over voltage, and this is not conducive to even from an electric vehicle standpoint on the charging infrastructure that's deployed. And grid infrastructure is obviously part and parcel of it. So other hurdles, and I think this is something that I've been focused on. But again, we're a small fish when it comes to government and the OEMs. But we always try and lend a hand wherever possible, because again, the reason why we brought this Tesla vehicle into the country is to create focus around e-mobility. And for people to understand that this technology is we need to be cognizant of the fact that the technology is on our doorstep, and we need to start, making plans. So what we've done is we've taken the vehicle across South Africa to shopping centres, to launches of sustainability projects with partners like Growth Point, property group, but there are many others, and showcasing what is possible and what is out there already in the first world markets. And people are surprised. We get often some of the same questions over and over. We almost could have a typed list of questions and just hand it out to the public, because we often get asked, what is the range? How far can you go on a charge? What about load shedding? So there's a lot of education that needs to take place, and I think we're trying to fulfill that role, but we're only one player, and we believe in a collaborative environment for everything. So we rely on partners, the motor industry themselves, to communicate the right messaging out to the public, to say, these are the common questions that are asked, and these are the answers that we can provide you. But in the same sense, the marketing, the information sharing, the education process is very important. We've also done many visits to educational institutions, universities, doing presentations, trying to get the word out, trying to explain how the grid can manage this. And the more the information is shared, the more impact that we'll have, and the more that we communicate and talk to each other. And obviously localization is a big part of that. So there are issues around taxes on EVs. I think reform is needed. The tax structures were compiled in the 60s, and I think that a lot of those taxes, for instance, ad valorem tax is an archaic tax that needs to be reformed. If you look at the way the structures were put together in years gone by, 30% on a 600,000 rand vehicle is significant, and it obviously puts a lot of barriers and hurdles into bringing new technologies and investment into South Africa. It's also one of the major reasons why Tesla hasn't actually entered the country, is because of the tax issues. So there's definite reform that needs to happen there. And if we could focus purely on things like ad valorem, and also bringing down or getting to some parity with ICE vehicles, I think that we can bring down one or two of those major hurdles that will really make a big impact to ignite more investment into South Africa and create more competition as well. So yeah, government policy is around EVs. I know that that's changing. I know that there are discussions in the background. So I do thank government for actually moving in the right direction there. I've seen some of the green papers, both at local government, provincial level, and national level. So it's good to see that those things are on the table. But I think the pace at which these things happen needs to be accelerated, because if we remember NAMSA, and we can we get access. I mean, you can easily access the data on the NAMSA website. You can see the sales figures across the board. These sales figures are important because a large portion of the value that South Africa gets in its coffers over the fiscal year is based on exports of vehicles. It's one of the biggest sectors in South Africa. So that is at risk. If we cannot localize the production of electric vehicles, it means that will be depleted year on year. And it would be sad to see. That will be in job losses. Other governments and countries would get the investment into the building of those vehicles. Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers will also move to those countries. So the knock-on effect is huge, and I think that the pace at which things happen needs to be accelerated in a quick way. So OEMs, NAMSA, it's up to you guys also to push government to get that done. Okay, so I've just put this slide is really just as just to show you the impact of the vehicles on the grid and the charging capacity of these vehicles. These are some of the vehicles that are currently available in South Africa. And if you look at the DC charging capacity of these vehicles, it's pretty significant. I mean, the Porsche Taycan can charge 270 kilowatts. If we look at the Model X, it's 200 kilowatts. So, I mean, 200 kilowatts is 405 amps from one charge station or one vehicle. Now, you can imagine if there's mass adoption of electric vehicles in South Africa. And on yesterday's presentation for the uptake of electric vehicles in Johannesburg, that would have a huge impact on our grid. So there's going to be, there's going to be this problem on the one side, and how do we solve for it? And I think this is where localization is going to become very, very important for us going forward. And definitely participation from the private sector. I think that the private sector is going to play a huge role in this. Decentralized power systems, decentralized charging stations, off the grid, et cetera, and government can be responsible for building the infrastructure in the background in parallel and putting up some infrastructure for electric vehicles on national highways. Okay, so the South African EV market, quite interesting, and this will also play into what I'm wanting to share in further slides. So if we take a look at the vehicle manufacturers across South Africa, a lot of them are centralized in these provinces, Gauteng, the Eastern Cape, and Natal. And we've, a lot of our focus has been on the manufacturers in the Eastern Cape and Gauteng. And from a localization perspective, it's important to understand the locations of these manufacturers, because a lot of the raw materials that we ship over to other countries for the manufacture of lithium-ion cells and battery packs, etc., leaves from some of these provinces. So if you look at the Eastern Cape, the Coega Harbour, a lot of the raw materials are shipped out of these regions, also in Natal from the Durban port. So all of the major brands are here. And again, the localization of electric vehicle manufacture is so important in the transition thereof. I know Toyota has also got a transition plan with hybrid vehicles, and the same with Isuzu and Ford. And I think every manufacturer within their own right is bringing in different technologies and the way that they see the transitioning happening. As with some of the presentations that we had today, I think people have got range anxiety. There are a lot of questions about battery technology and where we are currently. So the investment definitely makes sense for us to move into a hybrid type model until battery technology reaches the sort of 1,000 kilometer plus range and charging within 15 minutes. I think that's where we need to be, and obviously at a low price point. Some of the data that's been shared internationally is that the sort of inflection point for people to invest into electric vehicles is charging vehicles under 30 minutes to 90% with 1,000 kilometers of range and a $30,000 price tag. Now, that's roughly R500,000, and I think there'll be a lot more adoption of electric vehicles when those costs are achieved. So I appreciate the efforts of companies like Toyota, Ford, Isuzu, having that sort of initiative to bring in some, to bridge that gap, for people to become accustomed to driving vehicles. And we already see a lot of those vehicles on the roads today. Okay, so this is where we're leading to, is the opportunities for localization. And I think this is key. So lithium cell production is key to us getting to where we need to be to produce electric vehicles in South Africa. And lithium cell production is key to that. So it's important that we build the cell in South Africa and not import the cells and build the battery pack here. That's defeating the whole object. We want to own that full value chain in South Africa. We've got the raw materials to build. I sometimes scratch my head is how can we even allow raw materials to leave South Africa and then we buy them back at 5 times the price? It just doesn't make sense. Other economies are getting wealthier and wealthier, and we South Africans are suffering, purely because there's no initiatives to drive this forward. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here. So as far as lithium cell factories are concerned, I think it does need to be a phased approach. We've got a fairly mature solar and battery energy storage market in South Africa. And if we're going to localize the production of those cells, we can do it in a phased approach where we've got commercial and residential and possibly even utility off-takers for energy storage. It's going to become probably the biggest topic for South Africa over the next 5 to 10 years. Solar has had its place, but energy storage is the next thing. We really need to make a focus, and we need to get this battery factory and cell production on the ground as soon as possible. So when I talk about a phased approach, the first off-takers, and we would gladly sign another letter of intent to purchase locally made batteries. And then again, there's an allied opportunity there for packing manufacturers to pack those cells into a form to sell those commercial batteries and residential batteries, etc. So I think that it's a logical approach. This is the point I've just spoken on. Commercial off-takers for stationary storage, both commercial sector and residential, and the integration of charging station infrastructure. And this is what I was alluding to earlier, is that we have to, as South Africa, have the integration of solar and energy storage with charging infrastructure. It's so important, and I don't think people generally understand, because we've had a lot of hype around electric vehicles, but our grid is just not capable of supporting these big UFCs. So we have to include charging energy storage for this infrastructure. OEM vehicle manufacturers build battery packs for locally built EVs, primarily for export markets. New opportunities for system integrators to build assembly lines for OEMs. So again, it's it's a knock-on effect for the entire industry. So within the automotive sector environment, there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers to the automotive sector, and their livelihoods depend on what the OEMs are doing as far as vehicle production. Typically, the 3 to 5 year window for new vehicle rollouts to happen, and the tooling and the machine building that happens behind that spawns an entire industry on its own. So there's opportunity for the system integrators to build new machinery that builds these EVs. Even although it's simpler than the current infrastructure that exists, for instance, engine lines would now become battery assembly lines. Trim and assembly would stay the same. Body and white would pretty much stay the same. Paint shop would stay the same. So the local processes within the automotive sector would pretty much stay the same. It's just retooling, understanding the new technologies. Jobs that obviously don't exist currently will exist in the future. We often talk about job losses in the automotive sector if we don't do this, but if we don't do it, we will have job losses across the automotive sector. It's so vitally important that we start investing in this type of technology. That point is just what I've spoken about. Okay, so lithium battery recycling is another one, and this is why we're talking about the circular economy here, is to own the whole value chain when it comes to the production of these vehicles and then the recycling of these products. I think it's critically important that even in the solar industry, there's always been talk about this recycle. How do we recycle solar panels? And it's going to become a question in the next 20 years. A lot of these panels have already been installed in roofs, and when they reach end of life, there's going to have to be a recycling process. And it creates a whole new scope for new job opportunities, new business to start up. And it all speaks to the green economy. This is what it's about. EVs have a very bad reputation at this stage because a lot of them are driving on these roads powered by coal power stations, and that completely defeats the object of owning an electric vehicle. So even with my own EV that we drive around, wherever possible, we try and charge that vehicle based on renewable sources. So whether it's directly connected to a home with solar and battery, or the building that we are currently, the energy comes from renewable sources. So a local lithium recycling facility for all forms of lithiums and batteries. So this already does exist in South Africa, and a lot of people are not aware of it. So if anybody's interested, please let me know, and I can share the details of the company that exists up in Johannesburg. They already, I think they've recycled about 17 tons of lithium batteries already. And unfortunately, I didn't know this, and I think we need to communicate this because this is a big thing for South Africa. We have to have this type of technology and facility. Interestingly enough, and this is estimated data because there's no real solid proof of this number, but this is probably a conservative figure of the uptake of lithium batteries in South Africa. Is currently sitting at 15 megawatt hours per month. And this is primarily in the commercial residential space. Obviously, a lot of this is being driven forward by load shedding and people investing in lithium battery technology. This is outside of lead. Lead is another number on its own. But it just indicates, when we get to the end of life for these batteries between 7, 10, or 15 years from now, what are we going to do with those batteries? And I mean, before I knew about this company in Johannesburg, we had engaged with the Redwood Materials in California and putting various people in contact with them to send batteries offshore. And again, we're defeating the whole object there. So we really need to localize recycling. This is important. So the recycling of these materials, we can achieve 90 to 95% recycling rate. I know that Redwood Materials in California have done similar numbers. And if we can bring those materials in a very pure state back to the cell production or the cell manufacturer, which is also then localized, we've got a proper circular economy, and building value and exporting that value to the rest of the world. And I think this is what we really, really need. It's vitally important. Yeah, and again, many jobs will be created in the process in empowering communities. Again, these are things that don't really exist in large format, and I think we do need to, because we've got the presence of these large OEMs in South Africa, I think this is a really viable opportunity. OEMs are already looking for recycling partners for end-of-life batteries. I know that Yula was mentioned earlier. We've got good ties with Yula here in Port Elizabeth. They've got a battery research center at the Nelson Mandela University. So some of the battery packs that are either faulty or reached end of life, we do pass on to them for research purposes. But ultimately, those batteries do need to be recycled. And once the OEMs start producing electric vehicles in large numbers, we're going to need some sort of recycling facility. So again, a really large opportunity, either to be financed by the private sector or government. This is an interesting one. So if you look at China, there's a really good opportunity to recycle batteries for second life use. I know within the Nissan Leaf, a lot of those batteries are repurposed again for energy storage for residential systems. And they're doing the same in China. So the power banks that power your phones, for instance, a lot of the cells that are in those power banks come from second life batteries, which are then from vehicles. And that's also from buses. So buses, companies like BYD, etc., those cells, often the second life cells, are then repacked, repurposed. And again, this creates another business opportunity for South Africa, because it's the repackaging of these cells and creates completely new industries, new jobs, etc., etc. So it's a complete new knock-on effect. The tooling that's required to build those factories, again, supports the manufacturing sector. So again, it's the knock-on effect, and it's just so good for a country like South Africa. Okay, so EV charging, again, opportunities to produce AC and DC chargers in South Africa. That opportunity also exists. Again, speaking to that full value chain. This is an important point. So the localization of these products means better support for uptime for CPOs. So often, and we've seen this in South Africa, especially on DC charging infrastructure, if a machine breaks and there's not spare parts available, these spares need to be supplied from Europe, and often you can't keep all of the spares in stock. And typically, complete charging stations are kept as high-cost stock items. So if there's a localized manufacturer, those spares would be supplied freely, and it would be freely available as far as technical support, etc., is concerned. So it's a very important further down the line, especially for charge point operators, that they have local support. In Europe, obviously the guys there have the luxury of having those manufacturers based in those countries, where South Africa is, a lot of these products are apparently still imported. So there's definitely an opportunity there to localize the manufacture of these charging stations. I know for a fact that OEMs, the vehicle OEMs, would support the localization of these products, because also, they're supporting their customers with the vehicles and providing some of these services to their customers. Case in point with the dealer network for the Audi e-tron, those charging stations are owned by the dealer network. So they need to be able to support those products for their customers. They can't have these charging stations falling over and not operational. Again, this needs to be driven by the private sector. So I feel that, again, government's responsibility is for infrastructure development, roads, etc., and the private sector can look after this. I think there's enough capacity within the private sector to fund this, to drive it forward in a rapid way. Again, that is critical, that we need to move quickly on this and build out the network. I'll share this with many people, is that I have this field of dreams mentality. If you build it, they will come. And I think that is for a very pertinent to South Africa's conditions. We need to build the sector so that OEMs will bring their vehicles. Our government needs to support the initiative with the development on national roads, and I think that will happen. I know that is happening in the background, and kudos to those guys. Have had discussions with national government. They are busy with implementation of charging infrastructure on national roads to support the electric vehicle network. And these will be over, obviously, specific routes, N1, N2, etc. But the pilots for those will be coming up soon. Okay, so this is really a summary of what I've just been discussing: the solar, battery energy storage, and EV charging. What a recipe! And it is. It's really, all three of them are complementary to each other. And I think for South Africa, it's becoming more of a need than a want. Unfortunately, it does come at extra cost. What is helping is that Eskom have put their price structures up over the last 2 years. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I know a 10% or near 10% increase has now been approved by NERSA. And it's making energy arbitrage projects become more viable. So communities, South Africa is very much focused on residential estate living for security reasons, and there needs to be some sort of independence from the grid and energy security. And large-scale energy storage system, a centralized or decentralized system, but centralized for that community, are being implemented in South Africa already. And the arbitrage discussion, when nobody's using energy between midnight and 3 in the morning, those batteries are getting charged at a very low cost, and then discharged into the grid at peak times. And this is becoming more and more common in South Africa, and it will become once wheeling agreements are in place at metro levels. And these things are already in discussion. The AC and DC charger integration in metros and also in residences. If you look at countries like England, for new home builds, it will become mandatory that those residences are fitted with an AC charger for electric vehicles. And I think over time, this needs to become the narrative. We need to start looking at the integration of these technologies into homes. Pretty much the same as what we've done with solar hot water heating in South Africa. It becomes part of the solution for a home or a new build. We're already seeing solar, electric vehicle and energy storage, or energy storage and PV being installed in a lot of homes in South Africa. The next addition to that will be the charger. And we're starting to see, and I speak a lot about this, is the technology convergence through software. So the wrapper for all of these technologies is software. It's driven by a lot of need for the management of on the back end from utility space. So obviously, if we've got 10,000 electric vehicles plugged into their wall socket at home, there's going to be a definite impact on the grid. And it's been discussed many times over the last day or two. So it's critical that we have software and utilities that are managing this with software, as I spoke to on the first or second slide earlier on. So the boom is coming. We've seen a couple of graphs this morning as well. Just as we discussed, and it's also a summary, destination charging, will become more prevalent. Government does need to provide the backbone infrastructure wherever possible. Accelerated infrastructure development is possible in collaboration with private and public sector. And I think that's quite an important point, is that a lot of these projects need to be initiated by the private sector, but also being lent a hand by government. And I think private and public sector need to work on joint venture products, because the project is not going to be just one or the other. Job creation is one of the big things there. I mean, in the presidential address on the State of the Nation with President Ramaphosa, he said that the private sector provides 80% of the jobs in South Africa. And that's significant. It's quite important to understand that. And it's critical for us to maintain that and still grow that even further. Yeah, so just looking at the graph on the right-hand side, we can just see the annual growth in electric vehicles across the world. And you can see it's coming. The inflection point for many has been 2035, where there'll be a balance of electric vehicles and ICE vehicles globally. And from that point onwards, more EVs will become more prevalent. So I think we'll probably hit that point a lot sooner than 2035, in my opinion. But I think the OEMs would have better understanding of it. This is a very, very important slide. So if we look at this, the investment in charging point infrastructure globally, the run rate will be at $80 billion over the next 20 years. So year on year, $80 billion will flood into this sector alone, just on charging infrastructure. Now you can imagine the opportunities that lie not just in the charging infrastructure, but the back end of that. So the allied technologies, solar and battery energy storage, specifically around South Africa's context, but in a broader context, also into Africa. I mean, Africa is literally the sleeping giant, and I think everybody understands that there will be a transition at some point for Africa as a whole. But this just, I mean, explains over the next 20 years the opportunities for South Africa to also access the rest of Africa is also vitally important. If we can put that battery cell manufacturer, packaging facilities, and provide these services to the rest of Africa, it boggles the mind. I mean, we really can become one of the leaders in the world if we play the game right. On top of that, we still need additional investment to support the electricity grid. And this is what, again, this is information that has been shared internationally. We all know this. And some of the graphs that we saw yesterday were actually mind-blowing to see that. I mean, I've also seen the energy consumption of plugging in Tesla Model X into my garage and seeing pulling 7 kilowatts out of my home. That's significant. And it can quite drastically increase, firstly, the consumption of power at the home level, typically in a lot of cases, doubling the consumption of electricity for a homeowner over a month. So it's vitally important that it's balanced with a solar installation and energy storage to mitigate the increased costs. Yeah, sure. Okay, so reinforcing the grid to cope with extra demand, potentially different peaks of demand, essential accelerated infrastructure development is possible in the collaboration of the private and the public sector. And we've just spoken about that. I think it's plain to understand and easy to understand. Thank you. Any questions?
So Greg, yeah, look, I mean, a lot of information there, and I think it's what you put forward to us is that the opportunities for localization are immense. I mean, that $80 billion figure just in charging infrastructure alone. I mean, I'm sure there's many people in South Africa, businesses and the government itself that would love to get even a small slice of that pie. We don't have much time for any questions, but I just want to, there's a couple of questions people asking. Greg, I mean, I know the answer, you and I have chatted about this. Can you give us just a quick 60-second summary of why you chose to bring the Tesla into the country and not purchase one of the existing OEMs here? I've got there's a couple of questions people asking, why bring in a Tesla? I know the answer, but maybe you could just give a little bit of insight to that, and then we're going to love and leave you.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, and it was explained to me from one of the motoring journalists. He actually said to me that you can see that car drive past and it's an electric vehicle, or another car drive past, but to see a Tesla drive past, it creates an instant impact. When the first car arrived in the country, people were stopping, getting out of the motor vehicles and taking photographs of the vehicle wherever it goes. There's a definite interest around the brand, and I think that's what we wanted. Firstly, from a marketing perspective, but also then to drive discussion around electric mobility. And I think that's what's important. It's not specifically because we wanted to create a focus on Tesla as such. We are aligned with them as a partner, but it's really to create more hype around and impact around e-mobility. I think that's the key.
Fantastic, Greg. We're gonna have to love and leave you. We've got our next speaker lined up, but I think your presentation was hugely informative, and you've given us a lot to think about. And I think that circular economy and what we're trying to focus on, which is localization of the opportunities, you very clearly illustrated. So thank you very much for your time, sir.
Great, thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Greg.